I haven't gone on Shorekeeper in about 10 minutes. I forgot she existed. That's how fun these two are to play together. There's still so many places for me to optimize that even more. I'm gonna be honest, I do think this probably hits like 5K. And that, ladies and gentlemen, has to be one of the most ridiculous S6R5 performances I've ever seen for a character. Probably the best S6R5 that we have available. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have had the amazing opportunity today to take one of the most well-invested Brants in the history of Wuthering Waves and take him out for a spin. This monstrosity is going to be S6. This is going to be an S6 Brant with an R5 weapon.
Whatever.
And you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to see a character like this very, very often. And that's because, well, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people S6R5ing a male. Let's be real here. It's a gacha game. And so with that, what I wanted to do was take him out for a spin, see everything that he is capable of across his gameplay, and then from there, make a judgment call on just how good an S6R5 Brant is, because I've heard some very, very promising things. Let's take a look at what all his sequence nodes do. His first one is going to actually CC the enemies when he casts Return from the Ashes, which is one of his most easily interruptible moves. And so this actually makes this ability a lot easier to use, especially when Brant is something like a Hypercarry or when he's doing things like Holograms. The next one is every time he uses an intro skill, or he flips during his mid-air attacks, his damage is increased by 20%, up to 60%, stacks up to 3 times. That's a really, really good S1. His S2 increases his crit rate by 30% when he uses mid-air attacks or that interruptible Return from Ashes. And then he also gets a buff to his outro skill that makes him deal 440% of his attack, as basic attack, up to 2 times when the recipient of his outro skill uses a resonance skill. So it's kind of like built for a character like Chang Li, right? A character that can use it multiple times. Then we have an increase to Return from Ashes, the biggest nuke in his kit, by 42%. It's absolutely insane. Gonna do a ton of damage. His S4 is a little bit more mid. It focuses more on like his healing ability. He will now heal after he uses his giant anchor, and then he gets 20% more shielding. This is nice in holos. I would say it's actually its most apparent use case is in holograms, because I think his baseline healing and his baseline sustain is way more than enough. If you're tackling content like WhiWa or the Tower of Adversity. His 5th node is kind of bad. It's kind of boring. It gives you like a substat and a half of basic attack damage every time he does basic attacks. It's okay. It's like nothing to write home about, but it is a damage boost. And his 6th one is very nice. It increases the damage multiplier of his mid-air attacks by a straight up 30%, and then casting that enhanced Forte skill, Return from Ashes, will deal damage a second time. 30% of the damage dealt. It builds off of this bonus and, of course, the crit bonus as well. And the actual results do turn out to be amazing in combat. And when it comes to his weapon, you're going to get 8% more critical rate from 8 to 16%, and then a doubling of those 24% damage bonuses to total up to 96 after you do 48 plus 48. Huge damage boost coming from here as well. Now that we covered those sequence nodes, we talked about how effective they are. Let's get into what these echoes are looking like. We got crit damage, ER, basic attack. The only thing we're missing here is crit rate, but considering we're getting 30%, we're already going to be at 89. No huge deal, and with Shorekeeper, we're easily already at 100. So missing a crit rate sub, not really even a thing at all for this build. We're gonna have ER and double crit on this Echo. ER, double crit, and attack percentage on this Echo. Do keep in mind that it's gonna be a fusion damage bonus on one of the 3 costs. We're not running double ER, so we're getting even more potential damage boosts over here. Having a fusion damage 3 cost while having ER that isn't 280% is actually better than 2 ER 3 costs at 280%. So this Brant is looking very close to optimal. This 1 cost is also going to be double crit in ER, and this is going to be double crit, ER, and basic attack damage, as well as a resonance liberation damage, which you can use. This is one of the better pieces in the set. Unfortunately, the crit rate rolls are a bit low, but I will say this Brant is looking turbo invested. He is at really close to peak performance, and I'm expecting a lot out of this build. A lot out of this build. A couple of low rolls, but hey, when you have S6R5, who really cares if your crit rate could be 2 or 3% higher? We've done the overview. We've seen how good the build is. Now, let's get this guy into some action. Let's put him on some best-in-slot teams, and let's do some testing in the TOA. For this very first team, I'm going to be using a traditional setup. I'm going to be using a traditional setup that is going to involve Brant, a Shorekeeper, and a Chang Li. We're a little bit short on ER, but I think we'll be fine. Let's get right on into it, and let's see what this team can do. So I'm going to start off with a double resonant skill cast on Brant. I'm going to go over to Chang Li, build up, or I'm going to go over to Chang Li and Shorekeeper. I'm going to build up some stacks over here. And then I'm going to end up on Chang Li again. And then swap on over to Brant, and then do a bit of his rotation. And then keep on swapping over to Brant. And then while she's going, go back to Brant, get Chang Li's intro skill, and then use her liberation. And then we'll end the rotation. And that's what we're looking like. Pretty decent damage. But do keep in mind, guys, right, that Brant is kind of be, he's going to be more of a support in this team.
Loading. Together we vanish.
Let the flames rise! More passion!
My blade, yours.
And that'll end it here. I'm going to be real, though. In this team comp, we're splitting a lot of the field time, a lot of the damage potential with another character. We're letting Chang Li take a lot of the spotlight. We're giving her all of these buffs. And I do think that with an S6R5 Brant, this is not even close to his best team. It's good. It got a great clear time. Brant did a ton of damage, so did Chang Li. But if our Brant is this well invested, we can do a lot better than this. And so we'll use this team as a baseline for now. Now let's try it out with Brant as a bit more of a hypercarry. With a character like Sanhua on the team, on Moonlit Clouds, ready to support him and amplify his damage completely instead. Let's see how this team looks. This team is going to involve a very simple hypercarry buildup where Brant's just going to use that double resonance skill again. And then we're just going to share, right, the setup time between these two.
Astral modulation. Loading.
Stay behind me. At the helm.
And now we're on Brant. Here we go. And
Listen carefully.
you can see over here the damage is a little bit better. Yeah, the damage is a little bit better when we're able to get all that amplification off.
Oath from the heart.
That's a little bit faster. And so it turns out, especially at a more full build, when Sanhua is able to get all of those buffs onto him, boy oh boy, I think the damage is a little bit higher. It's a little bit better than the quick swap team. And so if you do have an S6R5 Brant, do keep in mind, Brotherman is basically just a hypercarry. This, in my mind, is going to actually be his optimal team. I think it's a lot better than the one he has with Chang Li. I think the only way that the Chang Li team is going to outperform the Sanhua team is if the Chang Li is also S6. I do think that might be the only circumstance where the Chang Li team does better. If the Chang Li team, again, has an S6 Chang Li, maybe with R5 too. Because this level of performance on the Brant, absolutely absurd. Completely ridiculous. We've seen what it looks like in the TOA. We've had this experience of trying out two different teams. Now let's give it one last stab against something that maybe has a little bit more HP. Maybe something like Crownless. Let's try out this hypercarry team against Crownless.
Shackles be gone.
Yes. In war with time.
Yeah, we're just doing the same exact setup.
Stay behind me.
Get that nice parry off with Brant's intro skill. And now we're going to get into the rotation.
Perfect finale.
And that's kind of almost enough to completely, almost completely clear The Overdrive Zone crownless.
Loading.
Stay behind me. Epic shot. Climax of the show.
And he's just going to have a little bit of HP left for this final anchor about to drop on his head. And we'll get the cinematic finish over here. He gets crushed. S6R5 Brant obviously is performing. He's not really a sub DPS anymore. Nobody's really buffing him. He's the one doing all the damage. And I think that sort of role transition is pretty nice. It's pretty cool. It's great to see that he's capable of all these different playstyles. Outro buffs do run out on him if you're going for 2 Return from Ashes, but your support's outro buff will be long enough to let you get off at least a second one with the 15% amp from a healer. So that's the TOA. Now let's see what it looks like in our other endgame mode, which is a little bit more focused on multiple waves. I'm wondering how good this S6R5 is going to be when we have not just a boss, but a lot of small things that we need to target as well. Let's just give our Brant, and let's use Chang Li this time. Let's see how this team is going to do.
Together we My blade.
So as you can see, Brant's S2 was doing all that damage there. That was all of those noises that you were hearing. Entirely just Brant's S2.
Take form.
In the limelight. Perfect finale. Listen carefully.
Who's the caged bird now?
And this clear,
Epic shot.
Together we
especially with Brant's S2, that's absolutely crazy. That's crazy. Seeing how long that buff persists and how much damage it ends up doing,
Climax of
that's
the show.
absolutely nuts. Unfortunately, that S2 is probably the best thing in WhiWa. As you can see right now, I'm sort of struggling with getting down all of my attacks on like these multiple waves of enemies. That's kind of like one of Brant's weaknesses in the game mode. But his S2 kind of makes your experience a lot better, if I'm being entirely real here. It adds some great things overall to the clear, and you can get a lot out of it.
loading. In war with time.
At the helm. More passion. Whee! Let the flame
And you can see that double tick on his liberation, especially at S6. The fact that it does damage like a second time, that's having some big dividends over here as well. Let's see what it looks like again. It blows up 2 waves of enemies. And then that S2 is just doing so much. And so, yeah, I could be playing this team a lot more sweaty. But this is just the level of performance you're going to get in WhiWa when you're kind of just really being, you know, kind of just like experimenting and seeing what's up with the rotations. And I'm going to say, if you optimize this playstyle even more, I think this easily reaches 4 to 5k points maybe. I think this reaches 4 to 5k points if I'm playing that way more sweaty and not being focused on what the effects actually do in the game mode. Because that S2 has the ability to just clear waves on its own. And it's completely nuts. And then Brant's S6 causing a second explosion and letting that clear a second wave by itself as well. I think we're going to have to give it another try. I think we're going to have to give this another try, doing a little bit of that.
Together we vanquish.
Epic shot.
Together we vanquish.
Who's the caged bird now?
At the helm.
My blade yearns.
Victory's mine.
And yeah, that's kind of like what it looks like when you do this a little bit more sweaty.
Together we vanquish. Mind's eye. Make it fast.
More passion.
Be reduced to cinders. Sever.
Same actor, different role. Listen carefully. Listen
Together we
carefully.
vanquish.
The only thing is, I would say you kind of got to be a little bit careful about how you're using your Chang Li skill after Brant comes in. You got to be a little bit careful about that.
Beckon the divine flame.
Listen carefully. First to the treasure.
Sever.
At the helm. Same actor.
Together we vanquish. Take 4.
Let the flames rise.
Yeah, this is, I mean, as you can all see, a lot better than last time, and I've still got to figure out better ways to play this team. Because as some of the enemies are dying so fast, I'm like canceling my abilities. Not bad for the second time trying this out.
Caged bird now.
Epic shot.
I haven't even gone on Shorekeeper. I haven't gone on Shorekeeper in about 10 minutes. I've forgotten she existed. That's how fun these two are to play together with all those nodes. And so, yeah, I said something about easy like 4 to 5K. There's still so many places for me to optimize that even more. I'm going to be honest. I do think this probably hits like 5K if you get really, really, really sweaty with it. So that's another one. That's going to be our performance in WhiWa. Now, we got to get into the meat of all of it. The real purpose of getting an S6R5 character, and that's holograms. So now that we've gotten all of those prior clears settled, we've taken a look at WhiWa, we've taken a look at the performance in the TOA. Why don't we go ahead and we take a look at what it's like in holograms? And it looks like the account owner has been struggling a little bit. So why don't we do them a bit of a favor and try out S6R5 Brant against some holos.
Lotus pervade.
Astral modulation. Loading.
Stay behind me.
Epic shot.
So we just do our regular hypercarry rotation. Throw a nice parry her face, and let's blow her up. That'll be the end of phase 1 right there, ladies and gentlemen. Do recall, this is only difficulty 5.
Leave it to me.
I can keep going. Like frigid death.
In war with time.
So we're getting some of those rotations going.
Stay behind me. A change of
She's going to do her blender.
I can keep.
It appears that Brant can do some really interesting stuff where I guess he's not hittable
First to the treasure.
during these animations. And so let's drop another anchor and end it. I guess if you're doing your air attacks from high enough, you'll just be invulnerable to Hecate during her blender. That'll be the hologram 5, Claire. Let's check out 6.
Oath from the heart. Worry not. I'm fine.
Frozen blockade.
Iron graft you knew. Loading.
Stay behind me.
At the helm.
And as you can see, that shield is available from the last clear. And I do think this is going to take her as well. Yeah, she's done. She's cooked.
First to the treasure.
She's completely cooked.
Same actor, different role.
Ordained.
And unfortunately, Hecate has caught us in her grasp.
Emgrich, shackles be gone.
We won't be getting off as many parries this time, unfortunately.
You're a bit
Oh!
here for me.
I got caught on the edge of the arena over there. Let's see if we need Shorekeeper here.
Climax of the
Let's see if we need
show.
Shorekeeper here. Maybe we don't.
Listen carefully. Epic shot. Ow, careful.
Okay, unfortunately, Hecate caught us right in the middle of our attack.
The fools.
And we do end up getting a little bit gibbed there, unfortunately. Let's try it again.
You stay back.
Let's try it again.
Lotus pervade.
Astral modulation. Loading.
Stay behind me.
At the helm. Climax of the show. Let the tempest strike harder.
Yeah, and that just obliterates her. Getting that heal on return from Ashes on his S4, like I said, its biggest use case was going to be in holograms, and we're kind of seeing it play out now.
Oh,
It is kind of good on holograms.
worry not.
Shackles be gone.
I engraft you.
All right.
Loading.
Stay behind me. Not worth mentioning.
Epic shot. Let the
All right, let's see if we can do it here.
It's gonna splash.
And that just gets it. We saw how much we could tank of her spin, and we were able to tank just enough to get the Bravo we needed to just dunk on her. And that, ladies and gentlemen, has to be one of the most ridiculous S6R5 performances I've ever seen for a character. Genuinely, one of the most ridiculous S6R5 experiences I've seen on a character. That's just them being played in Hypercarry. I do think it is undoubtedly the #1 way to play Brant if you are investing that much into him. That is a 1 minute Hecate 6 clear. And honestly, I'm thinking that if I just, build up a bit more of Brant's forte prior, during that part where she's like whipping the characters, I do think it could have been a lot faster too. But wow, that was, in my opinion, S6R5 Brant kind of feels like the Bugatti of hybrid characters. And especially in comparison to an S6R5 like Chang Li, these characters kind of have a similar role, right? They have less overall damage in their kit, but a buffing outro skill. But Brant, with his sequence nodes, scales so much better. He basically becomes a main DPS that can compete with S6s like Carlotta's, S6s like Camellia's, and S6s like Jinxi's, while Chang Li, unfortunately, doesn't really live up to those characters when she is S6. And so Brant kind of just is a reimagining of the hybrid role. And I imagine that this is the sort of power threshold we're going to see across S6R5 characters in the future. And let's be real here, it's incredibly strong. It changes his role completely. And if you are somebody that's looking out to get it and you're investing heavily in his echoes like this player, you're going to have a ton of fun. You're going to have a ton of fun. You're going to do some incredible damage numbers, 1 million on his forte, and it's pretty nuts. It is pretty nuts. But at the end of the day, don't feel too pressured to grab stuff like this. It's never necessary to clear. It's never necessary to play the game. But if you do really like Brant, he gets a lot out of these investments. As my final thoughts on Brant in terms of like value that he provides as an S6R5 character, I think he might actually be, quote unquote, the best one in the game, because he does the job of a sustain while having the damage of like an S6 DPS. And so it's a little bit like getting 2 birds, 1 stone, that whole scenario, except, you know, instead of going out and collecting food, you're spending money in a gacha game. But if I were to describe it all, you know, think about how all these nodes work together. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck here. S6R5 level main DPS performance, and then also an incredible amount of sustain. It is a lot, and probably the best S6R5 that we have available, if I'm being entirely real here. With that, let me know what you all think. Peace.